Welcome to the Balanced Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Matt Southam. Here, we delve into candid conversations with entrepreneurs, exploring both their business journey and their secrets to maintaining mental well-being. As we navigate the balance of ambition and inner peace, I hope you find insights, inspiration, and invaluable takeaways in every episode. Thank you for joining us. Matt, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here. And I want to kick off just by simply asking, how did you get into the business that you're currently in?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think it's been a bit of an interesting journey. I've done quite a lot of varying jobs over the years. And I guess it goes back to kind of when I used to run a pub, right? And
Okay.
I got into the point where, in your early 20s, it's fine. And you kind of doing the hours, and it's a lifestyle more than a job. But then you kind of catches up with you after you're doing kind of 60, 70 hours a week, and you think, well, there's more here. So I went back to uni and did a computer science degree, which I should have done in the first place, and that led me into my first consulting career. So we're looking back at back in 2010, I fell into a startup consultancy called EPL Group, and they were a retail focused organization, supply chain, and they were on the up, and they were working with some big customers, and I that was the start of my consulting career. And I loved it, absolutely loved it. Was with, the travel, the client base that we were working with, the colleagues that I had a great set of colleagues that even I still speak to this day, and over the course of those 10, 11 years, I worked on some big projects, global projects with some big names, and the transformation journeys that they went on, not smooth, not always, always very, very difficult, always very, very challenging. And REPL got to a point in early 21 where they were bought out by Accenture. And so they had that they were acquired by Accenture. And I'd worked alongside Accenture for, a couple of years in one of the projects that we were doing.
Yeah.
And I was kind of the opinion where I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to go into that behemoth of an organization. I wanted to then basically take back control of who I worked with, why I was doing what I was doing. And I got to the point where I was like, if I don't set up by myself now, then I never will. And I'll regret it. I'll regret it forever. So it was kind of like the universe basically saying, right, we're bought out by Accenture. It's time to go and do that thing and try it at least and see how you get on. So Tratec Consulting was formed, and it's an interest. When you come in, you're thinking about, okay, how do I start this business? How do I get to the point of and coming up with the name was just, it's called Tratec Consulting, is trading as Tratec Consulting, but then the actual name is Transformational Tech Consulting Limited. So it's a bit of a mouthful.
Okay.
So I had to kind of cram that down a little bit. And what I wanted to do, I guess the mission and the vision of what I wanted to do with the business is turn consulting on its head. Consultants don't have the best reputation in the world. I think everyone would agree with that. Whether that's driven by some of the big consultancies, who can say? But it's a typically an IT. What we find is it's an IT driven project, right? So the business is normally an afterthought. So getting end users into programs of work, normally a user acceptance testing phase or just before, by which point it's too late. And then you get to a point where the systems that you're implementing are not fit for purpose, or they've missed a big chunk of requirements, and all of a sudden you have delay on delay, and the reputation of the program, your business case goes out the window. So I very much now set up Tratec to be an advocate for end users, whether that's internal stakeholders, whether that's the customer that they're delivering for, and ensure that when I do work with clients, that we are very forthright and with our views on making sure that the business is engaged from day one.
Yeah.
Um, Without that, there's no point. I don't feel that there's a point at which we can engage properly, right? So I will always be honest and open with my clients and say, if you haven't got the business involved in this, or if you haven't got the stakeholders available to support this, then we can't really work with you, because it's one of those ones where you're setting up to fail at day one,
Yeah.
or overspend or whatever. And we don't do that, right? That's something that I'm very, very, like I said, forthright about. So I set up Tratec, and we've kind of driven down that end user first, change management, people, empathy, the human side of business.
Yeah.
And it's like I said, flipping it on its head. It's the technology enabling the business, but it's being driven from the business. It's not just, we've got to implement this shiny new technology that's come out, and CEO or CTO are pushing that down onto the business. It's the business have a genuine problem they need to solve, and we'll go and help them find and implement the technology that solves that problem. It
Yeah.
can be a mixture of innovation or existing platforms or whatever that looks like, but fundamentally it has to come from a pain point from the business.
Yeah, so you have to get that buy-in from, like you say, everyone involved all the way down. I think actually you mentioned about consultants and getting that bad name, and I sometimes wonder if this is because the people right at the top decide because this is what you do, get some consultants in, and actually further down with maybe people on the ground, people working, they're sort of thinking, hang on a minute. I don't understand why they're doing that, and they're spending a lot of money when actually my wage has been it's stable for a couple of years, and actually maybe there's a disconnect, like you say, between what consultants are offering and actually the people on the ground seeing any difference apart from these people wandering in earning a big wage while they're doing all the work.
And I think it's a really good point. I mean, the fact that, and this is not to slate big consultancy firms, right, at all, because they have a very successful business model. They
Yeah,
have
yeah,
the ability to, they have some very experienced people. But what you typically find is that they'll put one or two experienced people onto a project and then start filling it with people who are less experienced. So I've seen a number of articles, Financial Times and in Forbes and that kind of thing, about where your CEO is trying to take a managerial advice from someone who's been in consulting for 2 years, right? It just doesn't
yeah.
work, right?
No,
So I think that's potentially some of the barriers that we have to break down when it comes to consulting. People see consultants as like very high paid. They come in, they're are they going to cost me my job? So there has to
yeah,
be that human empathy and that respect when you go into an organization to go, well, actually we're here to, and I always, whenever I start working with a client, it's like, I'm here to help you. I'm not here to change your
no,
job. I'm here to help you get the most out of your job, to maybe take some of the things that you hate about your job away. And then it's that adoption piece, as you mentioned in the question. um, I think they say 70% of digital transformation projects fail through non-adoption. So
yeah,
it's a big problem that if you don't address it, and the change management element of it, you're just going to end up spending money for no return. And I think that's
yeah,
something that maybe CEOs and CTOs need to understand when they're engaging with consultancies, that and trying to form up projects and trying to get business cases written, that you need to start with your business, and you need to start with the end users, because without them and without their, you can help them drive on that change. It doesn't have to be that they're going to try and hold up the transformation, but at least when you're transforming a solution or a process or whatever that looks like, that you've got some advocates from the business to support that.
yeah. The stat you said there, that 70% of digital transformations fail. I mean, that sort of then you almost question: are people looking at it as a tick box exercise rather than actually this can make a major difference?
Yeah, I
And
think that's it's a good point, and that's kind of where I get to what kind of mentioned a little bit earlier. Is that I think it's getting to a point now where if it's an IT driven project, because let's look at AI as a great example, right?
Yeah.
AI has been around a long time, really come into the mainstream in the last 12 months. And what happens? It's nice new shiny thing that everyone's going after, and everyone has to do AI. And what happens when you implement it badly? I mean, I wrote an article about customer service, right? And everyone's going down the chatbot route, and I
Yeah.
hate them, absolutely hate them. Because if they're badly implemented, and there's a couple of examples in some of the articles I've written that I personally have come across when trying to get stuff done for my own, for my family or whatever, that they don't work. And if you don't
No.
work, and there's no number to talk to somebody, you're completely alienating your customer base.
Yeah.
So there is a whole big area where now CTOs, CEOs, all the C-suites see this nice shiny new AI is the future, AI is this, AI is that, and therefore going hand over fist. There's a big race for companies to get AI incorporated. And don't get me wrong, there are some really, really good use cases for AI and how it can work really, really well. Right? I'm not putting a dampener on AI in its entirety. But it's still in its mainstream infancy, and I think there's still a
Yeah.
lot of things like governance and ethics and that have to be really thought out. Elon Musk talks about it all the time, and
Yeah.
even the OpenAI guys who have had their Coronation Street episodes going on the board there.
Yeah.
I think there will be a turning point when AI is fully embedded into our ecosystem. I've no doubt, but we have to be a little bit careful in that the race to get it done can cause us problems. We talk about NFTs and Bitcoin, and it's the
Yeah.
next new shiny thing, right? And it's everyone
Yeah.
talks about Bitcoin and NFTs. AI is the next new shiny thing, and people have to realize that it's technically still in its infancy in the mainstream world, and how its uses are kind of going to evolve over time. So there is, you can understand why people are a bit scared for their jobs. You can understand why certain things will disappear, and that's part of the interesting challenge that we have to deal with as consultants as well. When you go in, because it's like, oh, you're going to implement AI, oh, my job's going to go, and you have to kind of fight that battle and say, actually, no, we're not here to take your job away. We're here to kind of evolve it a bit. So,
Yeah.
there's lots of those kind of challenges at the moment where you have to just kind of try and rein in the C-suite a little bit. I think that's
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, AI has definitely got that buzz about it. It has all year. The amount of books or online guides to implementing AI. Suddenly, I
yeah,
was being fed on Twitter or X or whatever, and all these different sort of platforms. And actually, unless it's going to make things better for your industry, why are you implementing a load of time or committing a load of time, resources into something that actually, what's the problem? What are you trying to
yeah,
solve, first of all?
exactly,
I think a
exactly.
lot of the time with AI, people have found a solution. They just don't know what the problem is.
Problem is
And
absolutely, yeah,
they're
100% agree.
doing it the wrong way round.
Yeah, and that's why so as part of the business that we're sorting out now is there's two parts to it. There's what we class as the operational transformation side of things, which is the business analysis, the data analytics, the data driven decision making, all of that stuff that gives you the insights and the inputs into doing your digital transformation, which is the other side of the business that we run. Because without that understanding exactly what you just said, right? They're trying to solve a problem. They don't really know what it is with AI. So until you really get into the weeds of, right, this process, I've got 20 people, as I found with another client that we're working with, I've got 20 people doing the same process in 20 different ways. Well, actually, that's not going to be solved by technology. That's going to be solved by you sorting out your business process and training your people
Yeah.
on how to do that process properly. You might be able to streamline some of that process by implementing technology, which then frees them up to go and do other things. But don't just go, oh, we need to put AI into this because, and that there's
Yeah.
no rationale behind it. Understand the detail, because that's where the devil is. The devil's obviously in the detail. Because what will happen is you'll implement it and you'll miss out a huge chunk, and it'll just cause more problems than it's worth. So, and
Yeah.
like you say, you spent a boatload of money and you're not really going to get the return from it. So there
No.
has to be value in it too.
Yeah, completely. Take me right back. So, you're obviously working in a pub, running a pub. So what did you learn from that you were able to transfer straight into your business when you started? And then I do want to talk about the challenges within your business, but what were those learnings you got from that initial start into work? Because actually a pub environment, like you say, whether it's lifestyle, it is quite that environment if you're dealing with lots of different people. At times there's alcohol involved, and therefore,
Yeah,
you're not always dealing with rational people. What
yeah.
did you learn from that?
I think it's so. There's a couple of things. So work ethic is a big thing, right? So you at the time, this is early kind of into early 2000s, right? So um, it's the working double backs, so you're working kind of split shifts. You start at like 6 in the morning till kind of 4 in the afternoon, then you get 2 hours, 3 hours off, and then you're doing 7 in the evening till 2 in the morning, then potentially you're back in again at 6 a.m. So that work ethic, you have to have that ability to really drive yourself to do that. So I mean, I've always been kind of really um driven when it comes to doing my best at work, all the way from when I was a child. I think that
Yeah.
kind of was instilled in me as a child by my parents. But so definitely a work ethic side of things. You can't run a pub if you're going to be lazy, and especially in the middle of Cardiff, and it just doesn't work, right? You
No.
can't do it. I think also management, and not even necessarily of the your clientele, but also of your staff, right? Because again, you have to, we're talking about me doing those shifts. They were also doing long hours,
Yeah.
12, 13, 14, 15 hours a day. You chuck in match days, and you're on your feet for 16, 17 hours a day. That motivational element of it, that whole I would never, I always got to the point where I would never ask one of my staff members to do something that I would never have done myself.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's a bit of a cliche, but it was always the truth. If there was any ever challenges, I would never put my staff into a position where that if there was a problem, that I wouldn't do it myself.
Yeah. Leading from the front as such,
Absolutely leading from the
yeah.
front, and I think that garnered a lot of respect from from the staff members, and we always used to have a good laugh, and with regardless who was on the shift, there was never any challenges, and I think that was always down to the fact that they trusted me to help them, and
Yeah.
they could come to me with anything, and and that's kind of that started the foundations of where I am now, right? I have the same with my staff. I would never ask them. I get my hands dirty with if they're struggling with a deadline, or it's like, right, tell me what you need and let's get it done. Let's
Yeah.
even last week I was knees deep in business process mapping and that kind of stuff. Right? It's not something that one is a small business owner you can get away from anyway. You have to get
Yeah.
your hands dirty all the time, but it just means that they can. The people that you work with, can rely on you to not, if I turn around and say, "Oh, I can't help you," you just have to deal with it. Do the hour. That doesn't work, right? So,
No.
um, so being able to, really, like you said, lead from the front, and um, drive the business from, you're at the forefront. People will follow you if
Yeah.
they can see that you're with them, and I think that's really key.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So how have you, dealt with that? You said you obviously used to work long hours. You're clearly committed to working. So how did you make sure that actually you don't burn out? Because that is a common one. Luckily, you were young when you were working in the pub, and
Yeah.
I've done it. I've worked in the nightlife industry as a DJ, and but also had a full time job, and so I've worked. But how did you manage not to burn out as you've progressed into actually running your own business? It's very easy to keep going with those same hours.
I think, being open and honest, I did burn out in just before, at the end of 2020. I was running director of I was the director of development services, so I was running a team of developers, quality analysts, product owners, and trying to grow that part of the business whilst also billing to a client. And also, so I was having my day to day role of trying to do that whilst working on a client. So I was getting up at like 3 in the morning to do the client work because I never had the time of the day to do it. Um, And part of me could put that down to prioritization, but I think and delegation. But actually, the I did delegate on top of that as well. So I did get to a point where I burnt out and I was off work for a good couple of months. I was really well supported in that time, but it got me to realize that work isn't everything. It's a big part of what we do, and it's a big part of who I am. But I have 3 children. They're all fairly young. They need to be looked after. They need my time as well. So I always made a point after that period to say, do you know what? At a specific time, I'm done. Even now, even with the business as it is now, at 4, 5 o'clock, I'm done, and then I'll put the computer down and have quality time with them. But if I do need to go back, and it's very rare now that I need to work until kind of 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. But if it needs to be done, I'll do it after they've gone to bed. So they still get time with me. I'll still be able to get what I need done. And then it's one of those things that I have to make a point of, listening to audiobooks or just taking that step away and doing something that's completely different. So I'll try not to listen to business books where I can, because it's just a perpetuating cycle, right? But it's more the fiction stuff, but also with Tratec now being the main shirt sponsor for Farnborough Football Club, I'm up there quite a lot. So that's a nice little kind of. I try and avoid taking the kids to that if I can, because that's kind of my time where I can just relax and unload, and it's the emotional side comes out then, doesn't it? So it's that's the balance I try and maintain. So it is tough. Don't get me wrong, it is tough to do that, particularly as we were talking before the podcast, right? Just trying to get, this week is people off sick and tenders due in at the end of the week, and clients still to serve and that kind of stuff. So there are weeks like this, but it's not every week like it used to be.
Yeah. I mean, I really like that you said about, that the football's your own thing and you go and do that, because actually a lot of people say, step back from work, go and spend some time with your family. And I agree with that. I've got 2 young children. I love spending time with them. And I do, I'm not always perfect at it, but I do try and make sure the time I spend with them, I'm actually present. I'm spending it with them. I'm listening. I'm enjoying their time, because, when I say they don't care about the business, I mean that because they shouldn't need to care about the business. Like they don't care what I do for a job. They're young enough; they probably don't even understand the full concept of it. So I wouldn't expect them to care that. Oh, actually, I've still got some work to do. But actually, the additional part on that is actually taking time to spend with myself. And by that, that's just whether I go to the gym and it's on my own, or go out for a walk, because actually I think it's, a lot of people say get support from other people, but actually you need to be able to support yourself.
Yes.
So taking time just to do something yourself. And I agree with that about stepping away from business books. I mean, I read a fair bit and things like that, but actually occasionally I want to watch a film that you might class as a bit rubbish, but it's just a complete distraction. It's something.
The amount of times I've watched Harry Potter now, it's it's completely like, what's going on, but it's not something that you have to pay much attention to, and you can yeah. But if you mentioned the kids shouldn't have to think about work. Absolutely agree. But interestingly, just coincidentally, really, to that comment, is that yesterday my kids were, obviously now they're off school for Christmas, they were playing work. I was like, don't what? Like they got an old laptop that I've got they use for messing around with, and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to go and play work. I was like, don't do that. Like you've got years and years and years of dedicating your time to that. Just go, play, absolutely, but don't think work is something that you really need to do. You got loads of toys, go and play with those, or go and do something else.
I know. They do pick up so much of what we do. I remember when, I can't remember which one it was, they were much younger, they had a toy phone, and she was walking around the room talking on this phone, and I realized she was imitating me on the phone. And it was at that point I realized how disconnected I was at times when I was on the phone, just sort of almost going, yeah, okay, yeah, cool, yeah, okay. And
Yeah.
you could sort of see it's not a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it made me think, oh, maybe sometimes actually we see our phones as a bit of a distraction to something else, but actually we're not even focused on that conversation either. We've got so
Yeah.
much going on in our heads.
And I think that's coming back to your like mental health and stuff like that, that's a really important thing, because it you end up it ends up building up, because if you didn't pay attention, just to use your phone call as an example, if you hadn't paid attention to that phone call, you like, oh, have I got to do something, and that kind of weighs on you because you maybe forget to do something, and then all of a sudden work's building up because you haven't done what you said you were going to do because you weren't present in that phone call.
Yeah.
And I think that's I guess the other question is, do we need to have as many virtual meetings and phone calls as we are? I've been in a lot of clients that just have meetings to prepare for meetings, and it's just like,
Yeah.
seriously, guys, come on.
Yeah.
You can't turn up to a meeting without having to have prepared for a meeting. So how far back do you go? Do you need to prepare for the preparation meeting for the meeting? And it's just
No, I've got a big thing about meetings and I don't know, but again, clients will email, oh, can we have a catch up? And I'm like, yeah, what's it about? What do we
yeah,
want to discuss? What do you want to achieve at the end of this? Because, and that's not to be rude, but it's like, actually, time is limited. All of us are limited with
yeah,
our time.
exactly.
So how do I prioritize this? And to get the most out of meetings, I think they actually need to be really structured. They need to be short, because actually long meetings, people just drift off, especially virtual meetings. If
Yeah,
you've ever sat on a Zoom for more than an hour, then you're starting to go.
yeah.
So you need
Yeah,
to
I
break
think
it
that's an
down.
interesting point. Virtual meetings, particularly, actually, I think, like, since COVID, and obviously the rise of the virtual meeting, and um, I miss the face to face. I
Mm.
whenever I can, I will try and get people into a face to face meeting, because you learn and you garner so much more from doing those things. Even if it's like, even we talk about, and we talk about sales or something like that, right? It's you want it's very difficult to have a sales meeting now. Whereas before, if you committed to a sales meeting and you were in face to face, you would be there. You'd have to go there, and that meeting would be kept, and you'd have that face to face. You get to understand how it works. Now it's so easy to go, oh no, I'm not going to. Ghosting, horrible. We can
Yeah.
talk about that in a minute, but it's so easy to go, oh, I can't do this because something more important has come up, and actually to the person that needs to sell, because they want to sell the services, or the one thing that frustrates me more than anything else is, and the hardest thing for me is to getting in the door, as it probably is with
Yeah.
everybody, but just to get people to understand how passionate and I am about what we do and how much value we can add, and until you have that face to face phone call, you can't do that. Email is
No.
rubbish when it comes to things like that. Cold lead gen on LinkedIn, but I think it's like that whole loss of doing a face to face engagement, whether it's sales, whether it's a workshop, or like you said, anything over an hour, and you're gonna have to have a break because they're already on emails and not focused and not
Yep.
fully in the room. I think there's a lot to be said about going back to some of the older ways. Is not that much
Yeah.
older.
No, it isn't. It isn't. But you pick up on those, I call them like sort of micro interactions. Just those little, you can, we've all got that, whether it's a sixth sense or whatever, you can just sense, is someone bought in on this? Okay. So you've got something on your mind. And actually, when you're just on a screen, that isn't always picked up on.
No, absolutely not. And I think the other thing is, like, you go into a room and the abilities to converse is so much easier, because even
Mm.
it could be, I don't know, you're at home, your cat jumps in your lap, or you missed 10 seconds, but it could be the most important 10 seconds of the
Yeah.
meeting, right? Or I want to be able to draw something on a board and just to mind map something out, or whatever that is. How do we strategize this? Oh, okay, you can't do that as easy on a computer, particularly if you haven't got like a stylus or something you can draw on a screen. Or so there are things that get lost in that virtualization of meetings, I think.
Mm.
So I think there's definitely value in getting back to some sort of face to face capacity, whether that's a half day meeting or a workshop or whatever. I don't have the answers. I think a lot of people are gonna. I think maybe I'm kind of trying to fight a losing battle with some of that, but
Yeah, it is.
yeah,
It is really a tough one because I'm the same. I love the interaction of meeting people and speaking to them, but equally, I love a 15-minute Teams meeting that then I can step out of and actually crack on with my day. I've lost, I say lost. Sometimes that 15 minutes would have taken an hour and a half before. So but it's a real balance, and maybe
uh,
it depends who the client is, and I agree. Sometimes building up that rapport with someone, building up the trust, that can be done much quicker and much easier face to face. Maybe further down the line, actually, things online are more productive, but there's a real balance. And yeah, I don't have all the answers there at all. I'm sort of I'm quite interested in. Work environments, virtual working, the hours people work. So to give a little bit of background to that, we're now a fully remote team, and that's been a great progression for us. Almost my next step is people being able to work in the hours that suit them.
yes,
But of course, the reason we work 9 to 5 is because most of our clients work 9 to 5. And actually, if I want to have a meeting or someone's going to phone me, actually, I want that between 9 and 5. I don't want someone phoning me at 8 o'clock, even if they're working at 8 o'clock.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
how do you balance that?
I mean, that's a good point because I mean, we're fully remote as well because there's no point in us as consultants, no point in having an office, right?
No,
At this point, we don't have a central functions team and who need to be together. We don't have we have developers and that kind of thing, but they don't need to be centrally located. So,
no.
um, but you're right. One of my consultants, his wife works between the hours of 11 and 5, right? So he has to do childcare. So he works in the morning up until 11 o'clock, and then
Yep,
he's off between 11 and 5, and then he'll work in the evening till kind of 9 o'clock. He's on a project where he's able to do that because it's not meeting intensive, let's put it that way. But
no.
if he does have to have meetings, they're between kind of 6 and 11, right? And then
Yep,
he doesn't need to bother he's not going to be able to bother anyone in the evening because no
no.
one's going to be working. But if we can that's the kind of flexibility that we're trying to offer to make sure that when we get the hours from our consultants, because it's not being off between 11 and 5 is quite a significant period of time during the
Yeah,
day,
yeah,
but it means that one, we can get the work done, but two, he gets the flexibility to look after his son. So you know it, maybe that's an extreme example, maybe, but we do try. I if I have to say I have to go and do the school run for whatever to pick up my kids, I need that flexibility to be able to go and do that. And I think
yeah.
definitely that's what home working is offering people a lot more, is a bit more of that flexibility. But yes, going back to the kind of office thing, I still miss going to see people face to face, and I always kind of get a little bit. It's quite a sad thing to say, but quite excited when it comes to I'm going to go and see people today, because you get so used to just being in this room. It's
Yeah.
to actually have that social interaction is quite nice.
Yeah, it is a real challenge, and I think it's something we're going to see develop in the future years. Obviously, while it's been going on for a couple of years now, since that sort of COVID time, actually, it is still fairly new for a lot of organisations. So
Yeah,
I think there'll be lots more conversations about it. And taking back, you said it isn't all just about work. And actually, I think lots of us have discovered that. I do the school run on a Wednesday as such now, or I am from January, and that's fine. I just build my diary around that. But being able to offer that flexibility is fantastic.
yeah.
But we've equally got to balance it to there isn't maybe the social interaction that people were having. So it's making sure you support people to maybe have their own social interaction outside of the workplace, because lots of people
Exactly.
lots of people relied on going to the office as meeting up with people, their work friends, that the social. Actually, we're losing lots of that. And yeah, I don't know where it's going to go. I'm not an expert in this, but I'm really interested in seeing how it develops.
Yeah, I think the other thing that what we've been finding, particularly with home working, is the commute and the
Yeah,
cost of saving of commute. I
yeah,
mean, we know how expensive the UK is generally, but train reliability and all the strikes and everything else that goes on. Public transport's difficult. Traveling anywhere is difficult nowadays.
yeah,
Um, Actually, if you're saving yourself, we're in Farnborough, right? So Farnborough, we're lucky we have a direct line into Waterloo, but um, still, if you're trying to get across London, you're still looking at an hour's commute to
yeah,
get into London.
yeah,
Now, what could you do in that hour, right? Well, actually, I could do a podcast, for example, right?
yeah, yeah,
Or I could do an hour's worth of sales calls, or I could do, So there's a lot to be said for not commuting to an office
mm,
and working from home. So don't get me wrong, I'm not completely anti working from home. I do enjoy the flexibility. I do enjoy the savings on having to go in and out of London and having to deal with the public transport system. But
yeah.
there's still that social, like you mentioned, the social interaction that's getting lost, I think, by having that more focused on work from home than in the office.
Yeah, I think we hopefully are going to see, and I use the word balance. Obviously the podcast is called Balanced Ambition, but the balance between how we work, I think will come in, because we are all trying to, life is about balance.
Yeah,
There are times that are stressful. There's times that are fun. There's, you want to spend time with family. You need to spend time with yourself. You need to work hard, but equally, it's not all about work. And actually, how we work, I think, will then be the next conversation to ensure actually it supports all of our mental well-being, because like exactly like you said, you can't just work. There needs to be some balance in there, but equally the way we work can have a major impact on just our mental well-being. In my current office at the moment, I don't have a window. We're doing some house developments and things like that, so there will be, but at the moment, if I don't get up and walk out, I've got no natural light coming
yeah.
into my office at the
Like being in
moment.
a cell for a day, right? Because you
Yeah.
can't.
So,
You
I
get up
make,
in the dark, start work in the dark, be in the dark all day. You finish work and it's dark outside. So it's like,
yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah,
know. So it's something I've got to sort of make a conscious effort to be up, be out, go into other rooms, go out for a walk, because otherwise, yeah, you don't really know what's going on the outside world. And I'll tell you a very quick story. I remember working in a nightclub, and so because we were talking about nightlife and all that, I remember it must have been during the peak summer. And we had an early, so I was running a lot of the promotions. I was also DJing, and we had an early, I think we had an under 18 event on so I went down for the early promotions. I probably got there maybe 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock. And of course, it was still light outside. So I went into this basement nightclub at 8 o'clock. We then had the entire evening as well. And I DJ'd in the evening, and then we had a drink afterwards. And then I came out at about 5 a.m. and it was light. And I was sort of like, did it actually get dark? And
yeah,
I'd spent the entire night in a basement. And it is very much, we need to make sure actually we get up and we move about, and we take stock of some of the nature as it is, and natural
absolutely.
light and things like that. Otherwise, it is very easy to be just sat at your desk at home working for the entire day, not see anyone, not go out, and actually that's not great for us.
No, absolutely not. And particularly at this time of year, because
Yeah,
like you said earlier, it's dark in the morning, dark in the early in the evening. If you don't
yeah,
get out and see, if you don't get out and see some sunlight, it's a very detrimental effect on how it works. So yeah, um, I think there's a definite value for people to get out and about. I'm not.
yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not a psychologist, or it's just you just know, right, when you're out, how much better you feel when you get out and about.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think any of us, I always joke that, I'm not a specialist in any of these areas, but actually, I think we all know, if we can eat a bit healthier, get a bit of exercise, get a bit of social interaction, all of this just helps
Absolutely.
us live
Absolutely.
better lives. You don't need to be an expert to understand the absolute basics of what makes humans sort of tick
Absolutely.
and stay happy. I want to finish off today asking you about a tip for anyone looking to start their business. Now, I'm going to ask for two answers here. So, because often I just say, what would be your tip to someone, thinking of starting a business? One, what would be a business tip? But secondly, what would be a tip to ensuring actually the mental well-being of a business owner? Because that it is tough, and it is very easy when you start a business just to work every hour going, because you feel like it's this is my all. I'm growing
Yeah.
this business. I have to work. So they might be interjoined, but uh, hopefully
Can I
that gives you a
can I
clear
do two of the business tips? Because there's one
go
really
for it.
useful. Yeah. So the first one I think is really understanding how the finance aspect works. So realizing that if you're having employees and how expensive employees are, right? As when you're a permie, you don't realize how expensive your package can actually be. So
Mm,
understanding that VAT is not yours, that you owe PAYE, that you owe corporation tax, that you owe. There's hundreds of different taxes that you end up having to pay, right? So just be
yeah,
mindful that whilst your finances might be looking healthy, just account for, and if you can, put them into separate buckets that you don't touch, as
yeah.
the revenue's coming in, so you don't get stung. I've been done that 2 years in a row now with my corporation tax in December, but also, so that's the first one. The second one on the business side of things is prepare to fail and learn
Yeah,
quickly. It's a massive learning curve on everything. Everything you thought, I was lucky enough to come from having done loads of different roles and exposed to lots of different areas of like marketing and not even finance and understanding kind of utilization, particularly from a consultancy side of things, but actually what I've still had a massive learning curve over the course of the last, well, it's nearly 3 years now. Still learning, um, and be prepared to kind of, I guess, if you can, recognize where your weaknesses are and leverage other people to fill those weaknesses. It's something that I'm still trying to do. So, I'm still going to try and look for a proper sales and marketing person to, and to drive the business forward. But I recognize that's not my strong point. Reaching out to people, I can go and network and I can talk about my business all day long, but actually that kind of initial kind of engagement part of it is not, so you have to recognize that you have weaknesses and you need to find ways of filling those weaknesses.
yeah,
Um, when it comes to the kind of the balance of things, I think we've covered quite a lot of it today, right? It's
yeah,
the getting out, making, even if it means blocking an hour or an hour and a half in your calendar, every other day, getting out for a long walk into nature, um, having hobbies outside of work that you actually have to follow up on, and so if you have football training, or if you I don't know, you support a preschool like I've done, whatever that is, you have something that's time bound where you can go, right, I absolutely have to shut my computer off now and I have
yeah,
to walk away from it. There is no choice. I've got to go and do this thing,
yeah,
um, because otherwise you will get so lost in um, work, and that it will take over. So yeah, making those kind of couple of things will definitely help, making sure that you are separating yourself from work. And I guess other thing is, don't have your computer in your bedroom like I do, because
yeah,
you fall out of bed at 7 o'clock in the morning and you're straight on it, and it's like you haven't even had a coffee before you start the day. So
yeah.
yeah, if you can have a separate room, have a separate room as well.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. There's 2 points there I want to follow up on. One, I love activities that you can't do while holding any technology. So
Yes.
or you're not as easily distracted by technology. So football training, probably a great one. You can't be standing there on your phone. Yeah, it's like you're
Absolutely.
committed. You're doing it, and I think something like that's really good. And yeah, that whole, if you are working from home, still having a defined sort of area or defined time that actually you shut down, because I think we all saw that in lockdown, that back in 2020, that actually the working hours and it just blended into
Yeah.
one, and I think you've got to be really disciplined to understand this isn't all about work.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Matt, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. I wish you all the best with your business. I've really enjoyed our conversation and your honesty relating to everything. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Balanced Ambition podcast. I genuinely hope the stories inspire you as much as they inspire me. If you found value in today's conversation, please share it with a friend. And remember, by subscribing, you won't miss an episode, and it would truly mean the world to me. Stay balanced, and I'll see you next time.